Here are some things I would tell my younger self if I were starting a business. Instead of trying to figure out how do I get over the fear of starting something new, I would ask myself, how do I feel the fear and do it anyways? When I was younger, I was trying to get rid of a feeling before I would take an action. And it wasn't until my back was against a wall where I felt terrified, but I felt also like I had no choice but to act, that I realized that you don't act without fear. You carry it with you and do it anyways. And I remember looking up the definition of courage, and I realized that courage cannot exist without fear. And that was when I realized that I don't wish for fear to go away, but I instead wish for courage to be present. And then when I realized that I needed to build the muscle of courage, that is when I realized, like, I don't need to waste all this time trying to get rid of the fears, trying to get rid of the anxieties, trying to get rid of all these thoughts and feelings that I have about failing. I just need to build the muscle of courage, which is accepting those thoughts and feelings and doing it anyways. I remember when I first started selling at 24 Hour Fitness, and the first woman I approached, I went up to her and she was on the elliptical, and I was gonna go up and offer a free personal training session. The first time I ever did it, the worst reaction anyone's ever gotten, was she just turned over to me and she was like, fuck off. That first week, I remember having to go into the bathroom and just crying because I just felt so awful. But I also didn't want anyone to know I felt awful. I was hiding it. I had moved out to California on my own. I had gotten this job. I didn't have enough money and I knew I needed to make it work. I just remember feeling so hopeless in the beginning. Before you make your first sale, it feels impossible to make money. After you make your first sale, you realize that you have the ability to make money. And that in itself is like the best feeling that one could have. But I used that energy and I said, I've just got to put all of this negative energy into learning and into growing. And so I bought like 3 books on sales, and I was like, you know what? I've never wanted to learn how to sell, but if I don't learn how to sell right now, I will never achieve the goals I have in life. Every night I would get back, I'd be exhausted, but I would make myself read an hour, and I would go to work the next day and apply whatever I was learning. It was doing that for a long enough period of time that finally I was able to break through, and I remember making my first sale. And one of the biggest things I realized was that, like, no tactic, no script, nothing of that can have the impact that the frame has on a sale. And I didn't even know at that time what a frame was, but I understand what it is now. And I'll tell you what the frame was. The frame was, I lost 100 pounds. I moved my ass out to California because I wanted to help other people do the same. Do you want me to help you? That was the frame that I brought to the sale. It wasn't, oh, here's my discount. Oh, here's this program. Here's what I'm gonna do for you. After reading all this stuff on sales, I was like, I don't need a tactic. I have what everybody wants, which is conviction. I truly wanna help the people that are sitting across the table from me. At the end of the day, I think people can feel your emotion when you're talking to them during a sales process, and they can tell where it's coming from. What I've realized that's been a huge strength for me from that day forward in business has just been authenticity. I'm just gonna tell it to people how it is. I'm gonna be honest about who I am, what my intentions are, what I wanna do. Of course I wanna make money, but I also wanna help you. You know, I remember one of my expectations was like, oh, once I have these people, like, I don't need to worry about getting more people. But what I realized is you always wanna be looking for new clients, because people naturally, if you really help them, are gonna go off on their own and do it. Because that was what I really tried to do, is I wanted to teach them what to do, not just like give it to them, so that they could go off on their own and they could actually like be empowered and make decisions on their own. So I would say if I was talking to somebody today or talking to my younger self, I would say, don't expect that what is today is tomorrow. You know, clients come and go, business comes and goes. There's seasons, there's holidays. There's always things that are unexpected, and business is not linear. It is very irregular. When you first start off, you don't know the trends, the irregularities, what's normal, what's not normal. And so you just have to expect that things are gonna fluctuate a ton. So there's this quote I heard, which is that fear is a mile wide and an inch deep. And it really resonated with me because when we first started Gym Launch, there were so many things that I was so scared of. Feeling like I wasn't doing enough for my team, you know, not over-delivering for clients. Am I legally or not legally compliant? Feeling like I was not good enough to lead people who were smarter than me. What I realized is that every time I actually confronted a fear, it was just so much less than I expected. Like, it's a shortcut if you're willing to lean into it. Because 1, the fear dissipates. And then 2 is you get to the other side and you get to move on. Hearing that quote, I remember thinking like, wow, that really resonates with me, because I always am expecting it to be so much worse than it is. And it's just almost never as bad as we think it is. I think that I've always been pretty hard on myself, and I think that that's good in a lot of ways. It keeps me moving forward. I'm always trying to improve. I'm always trying to be better. What I realized was it became a blocker for me when it came to leading a team, because people also want somebody who has a sense of certainty, direction, feels confident in themselves. I remember there was this exercise that a friend told me he was doing. I said, what is it? He's like, well, my coach told me to go to all of my friends and ask them, what's the one thing that I'm doing that's holding me back from being the best version of myself? I ended up asking about 8 people. Every single person said the same thing. And I remember feeling embarrassed because, wow, that must be very obvious. And then also realizing that like my humility was actually like massive insecurity. And the feedback that everyone had given me was, you don't know how good you are to a degree that it hurts you. I mean, there's being humble and having humility, and then there's just being insecure. And I didn't want to take my humility so far that I was an insecure leader. And I thought to myself, you know, would I want to be led by somebody like that? And so that was when I really started working on changing my behavior so I could show up like somebody who knows that they're good at stuff, you know, rather than just pretending or just thinking you suck at everything. I just decided to act differently. I did things that made me feel very uncomfortable. Taking credit, really hard for me. But really hard to also lead a lot of people if you have no credit. So I started being okay taking credit. I started advocating for myself more on meetings, in decision making, and I started making decisions, even though I felt wildly uncomfortable, that other people didn't like, but I saw it pan out. I just acted differently. If you change how you're acting, eventually your mind will catch up and it will stop having those thoughts that provoke the anxiety and the fear. I think we waste a lot of time trying to change our minds when changing your behavior is much easier. I think a lot of people get into business for the wrong reasons. They don't want to be the one that makes the calls. They don't want to make the decisions. They don't want to have to guess what to do next. And they want someone else to tell them what to do. It's like, well, if you want to do that, then you should have a job. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fantastic. There's so many happy people who have jobs, probably happier than people who have businesses. Having a business gets romanticized. People don't understand that there's nobody holding you accountable. There's nobody to tell you what to do. There's nobody that holds all the answers. And you're never going to have a sense of complete certainty of any decision you make. It sucks a lot of the time. I think early on what I realized was no one person has the answers. Lots of people pretend like they're experts in all areas, but tend to only be really world-class at a couple things. And so I would rather consult with somebody on the one thing they're world-class with and then consult with somebody else who's world-class on the other thing than try to get everything from one person. I think we have to be really careful of who we seek instructions from. I used a lot of books and like self-guided courses when I was first getting into business because most of the people who I really wanted to be mentored by, like, I have no idea why they would want to mentor me. What evidence is there to support that I'm like the next anything? The best mentors often pick the people that they mentor. The mentorees do not pick their mentors. Assuming that you're special and that you're different and they should give you a shot, very entitled mentality. But I think a lot of people waste a lot of time, trying to find a mentor rather than being resourceful, reading books, studying courses, gaining skills. And it's like all that time that you go wishing for a mentor, you could have just been bettering your skill set. There's probably a million things you're bad at if you're just starting a business. Like pick one to start with. It's like trying to decipher like which information is the right one. It's like when you're sucking so bad that you can't even decipher it, then it's like anything is better than nothing. I think a lot of it comes down to proximity and luck. It's not like a mentor is going out and like seeking the internet, looking for like the next predecessor or whatever. Jesus, they're just like, if you happen to stumble in their area, they find you interesting and like you have a lot of potential and you respond to their advice, they're probably like, yeah, I'm gonna invest in this person. There's this quote, and I've heard it so many times, which is like, the goal is to be respected, not liked. I think a lot of people misuse the quote. A lot of people, what they really mean is like, you need to be feared, not liked. And I think that the term respect, I think of left alone, as in your team respects you enough to like let you be, let you have your space, not constantly be on you, bugging you, all these things. I think a lot of people, they use that quote because they actually just want people who do exactly what they say and are scared of of what will happen if they don't. I think it's important to be respected and liked. If you want to access discretionary effort from people, then it would make sense that they would not provide that unless they also like you. People do more of what they like and less of what they don't like. They also spend more time with people they like and less time with people they don't like. If you're their boss and they don't like you, they will try to spend less time with you, which means spending less time working. So I don't really see how having people that don't like you equates to getting better performance from your team. I think I did a fairly good job with my communication to my team as it got really big. When we had 100-some people at the team, I really was rigorous with my communication. I would spend every night, Sunday night, 2 hours working on what I called like the weekly newsletter, which was like the newsletter from me. And I would get something from every leader, get something from departments, put in there like what's top of mind for me, add in some resources for people, whether it's podcasts, books I'm reading, whatever, because I wanted people to feel like they still personally knew me, what did I do this weekend? What was top of mind for me? What was I working on in the company? But I also wanted to have them to have concrete updates of what was happening across the entire company, not just what the department that they're working on. And so I think I realized that the things that we do that we say aren't scalable, it's just a cop-out. Like everything we do can be scaled to some degree. And so think about the personal conversations you have. What knowledge is exchanged when people have those personal conversations? Okay, well, how can I share that knowledge on a group level? Does it feel the same? No. But will they feel like they know you better? Yes. And so I think that there's always creative ways to scale communication. It's just that often we say that it's not possible, and so that prevents us from even having a bad idea, let alone a good one. And so I think I did a good job of scaling the communication. What I probably dropped the ball on for the first couple of years was scaling the knowledge that I had to my leaders. I think I probably hired too many people in the beginning that had too little experience, and I just truly didn't have the time to pour into all of them that they needed. And that was on me, because I should have recognized that I needed people with a little more experience, because I didn't have the time to do my job and also train all of them to the degree they needed it. If I were looking back at my younger self, I would say there's nothing wrong with recruiting more help. Business is hard enough on its own. You don't need to make it harder on yourself. What was interesting about that moment for me was that it was when I finally realized I wasn't invincible to the normal mistakes people in business made, because I think the success the business had was so fast and so abnormal. I assumed that I was doing things also in a way that wow, I probably will also get to avoid a lot of the common pitfalls that people experience when they get into business. And I realized that was not the case. I actually just delayed the pitfalls and then got to deal with them all at once later. I think you're not really an entrepreneur until you get slapped in the face. Either you lose a fuck ton of money, you make a huge mistake, you really hurt the business. Everyone that I know that's a great entrepreneur has had they've at least had their one giant slap in the face, and then they've gotten through it. And I think that was my first one. And it shows you that you're not invincible and that you're not the smartest person in the room. Because I think a lot of people, when they're young especially, and things are unusually successful, you think your shit doesn't stink, and it just ends up biting you in the ass later on. I would say that if somebody's early in their career and they're experienced a lot of success, there's probably a lot of things that they know they need to get to or they've been avoiding, because their success has overcompensated for some of the areas of deficiency in the business. Rip them out from under the rug right now and work on them, because the moment that what I would say is probably success arbitrage dissipates, those things will be why your business goes down. Usually the success is caused by one or two things that are unusual, right? So it's this huge distraction, but then there's all these things over here that are fucked up. But people have so much success, it overcompensates for all the deficiencies. But once this starts to naturally, everything does, come down, because everything that goes up comes down, these things become exposed and they start to heighten, and the importance of fixing them starts to increase. Do not treat these deficiencies like they are small problems. Treat them like they are about to become big, and attack them in that manner and shore them up, and then you will be set once this starts to decline, because you'll have a solid base. I think it's just bringing yourself to a level of awareness to understand, why does my business even fucking work? And then, okay, well, that's why my business works. What are all the things that aren't making it work? And that's probably everything people are avoiding, because people assume that everything's always gonna get better. And I'm oh, a lot of stuff just gets worse. And you have to get better in the other areas of your business. Otherwise, you're never gonna compensate for this other piece. It's interesting, because when I was younger, I built the business from the bottom up. I hired customer success reps before a customer success manager. I hired salespeople before a sales manager. And I don't know if I would have done it differently, because I learned the pros and cons of doing it that way, but I do it differently now. If the business can stomach it financially, I think it makes it a lot easier in the long term to hire the leader first. I also think that the reason that's hard in the beginning when you're inexperienced is you're also not good at hiring leaders. So it's really easy to hire somebody who sucks. So, there's pros and cons of both. It's if you have the money and the skill of hiring leaders, it makes sense to hire them first. And I have both of those things. If you don't have the money and you don't have the skill, maybe it doesn't make sense, because if you have a great sales system going and then you hire a leader who sucks and the business doesn't have enough margin, that's it, you're done. I think that a lot of the times people seek to have a business because they want freedom. If you really want freedom, then just become an affiliate marketer or something. You know what I mean? Build a business that is very little fulfillment. Maybe you're just marketing for another company. That's what I would do if I really wanted freedom. Because the thing is, if you build a business, you have people whose livelihood you are responsible for, and also people who are paying you money, who are expecting a certain outcome. And that is responsibility. Like, with great freedom comes great responsibility, you know? Then it's like, okay, well now, do you really feel free? Because like, yes, you could go off and vacation for these 4 days randomly, spontaneously, but oh shit, you know, what's gonna happen? I've got that big project for that client. I probably have a different motivation, which is impact rather than freedom. Like, I definitely feel free to a degree, but also feel very much like I have things I am responsible for that prevent me from like doing anything I want at any time. You just need to know what your goals are. And if you're leaving your job because you want complete freedom, then why are you taking on, you know, customers that are incredibly demanding that you're promising a lot to? I think that the way that you know that you're on the right track with making an impact is through the feedback loops that you create in the business. One of them is financial. Yes, that's a measure, but you can make money and not be getting client results. So it's like, okay, let's make money. Let's also measure client results. Okay, well, you can be making money and getting client results, but what if your employees hate their lives? The way that you measure the impact is look at all the parties involved and put in place metrics to measure, is this number going in the direction we want? That's how I measure it. And that tells me if we're having the impact we want to have. And not everything's always going to go in the right direction all the time, but generally over like the span of a year, is it all trending in the right direction? Week over week, months over months, even sometimes quarters aren't going to be always going the right way. But it's like over a long enough time horizon, are things trending how you want them to trend? And if they're not, let's revisit the plan we have. So what I would say to younger Layla is that if you're thinking of starting a business and you're feeling afraid, just remember that courage is only possible in the presence of fear, not in the absence of it.